Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Oh, that's the point. I meant to ask you, is your surname Gill or Jill?
Gill.
Gill, okay. Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. I've just forgotten what you said.
Joel.
Yeah.
And then Gill.
Joel, Gill.
Gill with a gut.
Hi, I'm Adam Jennings for the third time, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Joel Gill, Chief Experience and AI Officer at Artisan. Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Joel Gill, Chief Experience and AI Officer at Experience Artisan, for a relaxed, two-way conversation about his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what it takes to lead with creativity. Honestly, Joel, hi, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mr. Jennings. How are you?
I'm good. We got there after 3 attempts at the intro.
It's all good. It's all good. Everything is lovely. Thank you so much for asking me to participate in this wonderful thing that you're doing.
Of course. I'm really excited for this one. I'm looking forward to hearing your stories and insight as well. And to start us off, like most of the other episodes, and for people to get to know a little bit about you, if we were meeting in person, where would you suggest we meet, and what would you order to drink?
Wow. Okay. Easy. Anyone who knows me, easy. It will be probably a very bougie, expensive bar, and as is standard, the first round will be margaritas.
Very good. Well, I'll raise you a metaphorical margarita to cheer you on for this recording.
Thank you.
And we'll get straight into it. Much along the same vein, again, for people to sort of find a little bit more about you, is there something on your desk or near you that gives us a little bit more information about who you are or how you work?
Well, this isn't some kind of interesting image behind me. I'm actually sat in my recording studio, so I still have big issues looking at music, stanzas, staves. It's all about improvisation. It's all about experimentation and adaptation. So I think that's a pretty visible and accurate, I think, answer to your first question.
Mm. And so was music first or design first?
Oh, Lordy, music. Absolutely,
Right.
Hands down. I was one of those kids who was encouraged, and for the more, shall we say, South Asian Punjabi community, beaten by my folks. I'm of that age group where that was perfectly acceptable and encouraged to be highly academic. I found all of that to be incredibly boring, and I would escape from physics lectures and chemistry lectures in particular and go and hide in Mrs. Williams's music room, and made my way across, all of the instruments, and landed on the piano. And I thought, yeah, this is cool. That is how I got into doing music. She introduced me to a couple of people. I ended up doing quite a lot of session musician stuff. Being a brown face, crikey, mid-80s and all of that kind of jazz. Very, very interesting. I was used to racial profiling, I think we call it now, because I was born and raised in Plaistow in East London. You turn up to a studio and people would look at you and say, "Oh, mate, no tablas or sitars needed today." And then somebody very famous would pop their eye and head around the door and go, "Joel, shit, come in. Yeah, you're early, as usual." Blah, blah, blah. And, off we would go. But I was used to all of that. And yeah, so that's where I started doing music. And that was my introduction, if you like, to design tooling. Because once sessions were finished, back in the day, it's not like, this studio here, or access to tools, shall we say, for musicians was incredibly difficult. The setups that I was used to and using professionally, they were the price of a house. So you were very, very lucky if you got to play with those toys. So we'd do the session work and as quickly as possible, and we'd spend the rest of the time just messing about. And that's when the old school, brilliant, amazing graphic designers who did beautiful work would turn up and start pressing buttons and pulling sliders and irritating us generally. And I thought, as is my habit, okay, I'm going to find your cave and I'm going to press and play with your toys. Don't know what iteration of Mac it was. Could have been Illustrator version 1. And I thought, crikey, this is fun. I could do this. This is all right. But I wasn't thinking I could do this because of a career. I just thought this is something cool to do. Now, my day job at the time was at British Airways, and I was part of a team of 3, which were responsible for all of the technology for call centers globally. And at that time, British Airways had a massive global footprint. The internet didn't exist. Everything was offline. Everything, all of these call centers. And the tech that the agents were using were GUIs, old school GUIs, and sometimes even green screen. So look that up, folks. If you don't know what green screen is, go look it up. And everything then got standardized from green screen to GUIs, and then you got to play if you wanted to, because there were no standards. Yeah, there wasn't a design agency you could go to and say, hello, I'm from British Airways. I need you to create some software for me for thousands of call center agents. But when that time arrived, I was actually, crikey, even MS Paint or that Illustrator, whatever version it was, creating static assets, obviously, transposing them into PowerPoint. And hey presto, is a clickable prototype, which blew the devs' minds because they could actually visualize something for the first time. So I was doing these wonderful things before the discipline, as we all know and love it, actually appeared. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it's like a theme of discovery running through all of that, experimentation and discovery running through all of that. And so it makes sense that the drive to find something that captured your enthusiasm very early on, to going to, is it Mrs.
Mrs. Williams.
Wilkins?
Mrs. Williamson, yes.
Yeah, to go to the refuge of the music department, and then kind of experiment and play and find your voice there, and then to take that through with you. As we're kind of going through that, I would love to know if you could just take a little time to go through as a sort of bullet point from when you started in design to where you are now, or maybe before design, if that's relevant to the story of you and your career.
Correct.
You don't need to hit every note, but just the sort of key milestones as you went through.
I think if there was a process, it would start with tooling, because even when I was in that recording studio, I think it was Powerhouse in West London, it was all about, okay, using Illustrator. And then that got transposed into my day job at the time with British Airways. What do they call me? A technology business manager. But the tooling, the then development of processes where you could try and understand what a requirement was. We hadn't even got into the realms of need, let alone, anything that we take for granted now, and then mock those up and experiment. It's always about experimentation, and then validating, not necessarily with business people, but definitely technical people. And then it would go to the business, and then it would get various approval processes, et cetera, et cetera. So that thing at British Airways occurred in the call center world. Then online woke up, World Wide Web, British Airways didn't even have a website. They didn't even own the domain. It was Bell Atlantic until somebody purchased that because it became available. So that was where BA.com came from. By that time, everyone was in a hurry, much like now with AI's introduction. Yeah, we've got to go online. You have to have a website. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I got eaten up by the BA.com team because they were interested in, okay, who knows about channel shift? So I knew everything there was to know about all of the complex journeys in the airline world. And the only thing that was happening in the online world for a airline was what they call an ABA journey. So ABA journeys is basically you might start in London, you go to New York, and then you come back to London. So it's ABA. And did that, looked at new tools, etc. It was more information architecture, as we would call it now. And then that evolved into solution architecture. So all the while, my academic side, which is pretty much exclusively engineering and thinking like an engineer. So now I can just look at, no one's going to know these, but look up Hayes car manuals, folks. And back in the day that you would have those, and you'd have these massive schematics of all of these different components and basically a service blueprint, if you like, from a certain lens. I can now look at an ecosystem and bang, that can kind of appear. But that's taken decades to do. But anyway, BA.com. Lovely. World Offers came along, and I was asked to have a look at that. Woffers, as BA used to call it. And I redesigned, and apparently it was the first introduction of interactive design on a travel website. Didn't get any credit for it. I wasn't expecting any credit for it. Somebody else ran off with the credit for it, which is, it didn't bother me at all, because I was quite used to that from stuff that you do in the music world. BO.com matured more, had the 80s crash, if you like, and then followed by 9/11, and they wanted to get rid of everybody. I was old even then, so I walked away, still with my concessional travel. I managed to negotiate well, and decided again, yeah, much like now, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back into engineering? Do I want to go back into academia? Do I want to do music full time now? What do you want to do? It just so happened that had two Rugrats, and decided that, yeah, the lady who I was with wasn't working out. So no job, no home, because that's how divorce works in the UK, and two small people. Great. Not a unique scenario, right? And no violins playing here. And I thought, you know what? This UX thing, this Nielsen chap, what's he on about? Jakob Nielsen. Somebody threw me some books, and I thought, I like this. This is good. And I was really, really lucky that the first couple of, I went contracting. And it was all about, okay, what was the popular tool? But there was a very, very steep learning curve, and yada, 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 yada. Went all the rounds of different agencies, hit every sector that I could, because even then I was playing catch up with all of the cool kids who'd come out of whichever uni and done a master's in HCI. I clearly did not. So that was brilliant. And you had to tick off, as a jobbing contractor, you had to tick off AKQA. You had to tick off Sapient Nitro. You had to tick off, all of these different sectors. Otherwise, you're not going to get another gig. It was kind of like, yeah, done that. Good, move on, and you build then your personal professional currency. Ended up then, crikey, who was the Permi? Yeah, the first Permi one, I guess, was HSBC. But before that, I worked, and I've got to give him a shout out. Brilliant design leader, Charlie Francis. And that's where I met Robert Powell as well at 1CP. So One Canada Place at Barclays. And that was really where the financial sector was embracing design big time. Lots and lots of investment. I mean, whole floors. Imagine a financial institution dedicating an entire floor to design. Right, we had Seren was there with their kind of usability lab, testing lab, all of that kind of jazz. It was incredible. Charlie, it was the worst interview I think I've ever given in my life. My portfolio was shite. It was shocking. And I was one of those who was, you don't have time to do it. I'm working all of the time. You know, when am I going to find time to invest in a portfolio? And I'm getting jobs anyway. You know, but I was shocked when I got that gig because I walked out of there and I was thinking, there's no bloody way. There is no way at all. And I was kind of glad because I think it was Hugo, lovely Hugo, who talked me into going for the interview in the first place. Anyway, I was there for 10 months. Absolutely loved it. I'd done trading applications before. I'd done insurance stuff. I'd done, you know, different levels of investments and in that space, but I hadn't done retail in the finance world, you know, so mortgages, personal lending, loans, this thing, that thing. And I just, why would anyone do that? But it was brilliant because of the people who I was around and because I had an awesome, awesome manager who, Charlie Francis, if I haven't said his name already, and the work was outstanding. You know, I did things like personal lending. He said, okay, you're going to be Mr. Personal Lending. Okay. Fine. And the nicest piece of work that I ended up doing was around UK loans, and it went up by, I think, 200 something %, sustained over 9 months. So it made the bank shitloads of money, which is great. That then got the attention of some folks at HSBC. HSBC then approached and said, we're building this design thing. Do you fancy coming to do it? And there was an airline in the Middle East who was also interested, personal reasons and everything else. And I ended up going to HSBC, which in some ways was great, in other ways was terrible, because you're only as good as the digital and design maturity of the ecosystem that you're in. And at that point in time, it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience for anybody. My manager at the time said, yeah, I've just hired you way too soon. So after 18 months, I said, bye, because I just literally couldn't take it. Coming from a contracting background, I even did consultancy for IBM for a year for my sins, but everything was about delivery. Everything was about delivery. So that experimentation, the alignment with tooling, the negotiating with whomever it happens to be, legal risk and compliance people predominantly because they're generally perceived to be blockers, how to negotiate, how to have conversations with those folks. Incredibly useful, incredibly powerful, and I learned so much. And working with brilliant people like Robert Powell and a host of others as well. And you're constantly learning. Constantly learning. So HSBC, after 18 months, I left. I walked out of that one, went traveling for a bit, and then arrived back. And I thought, right, now what? Went back onto the contracting thing, did a whole bunch of work there. Started off my consultancy, Experience Artisan, did shitloads of work, all over the place. Literally, I think the only place I haven't worked, and I define work as, you know, you're actually delivering something in a place for more than 6 months. Yeah, not like a month here or 2 weeks, whatever, no. And the only place I haven't worked in that classification definition is Australasia yet. So then Shell came along and they said, do you fancy coming and building an internal design capability? But they focused it around CX. And they wanted the usual come and do, here's a task, and I'm very vocal about no. I mean, it depends on the situation, right? Folks need to eat, they got bills to pay, etc., etc., etc. But I've always advocated that if somebody wants you to do a design task, that's a massive red flag for me. Yeah. Anyway, so I said no. But I'll come in and talk you through anything you like. And they grilled me for a day, and I found out afterwards that they said, there's no way this guy's going to join us. No way at all. It was 3 people who were interviewing me, and they said, okay, we'll give you 20 bananas. And I just laughed and I said, no. So that we ended up in a space, and then that was amazing. That was amazing. 6.5 years later, things change. But Shell, I mean, we can talk about that if you like, and how you go into a megacorp and grow it into a capability of hundreds of designers with multiple disciplines, introduce design ops, introduce a career pathway. How do you evangelize? Okay, I built something called the Experience Academy, and everyone, like some people, they just call it Experience Academy. That's the Experience Academy. It's T. Which I thought was quite novel and funny for me, because it's a global organization, and you'd have morning tea or afternoon tea, right? And that was a vehicle where it gave an opportunity for the practitioners to demonstrate the work that was done in context, because very often you go to organizations and the case studies are all external. It's very, very difficult for those internal stakeholders to actually understand and contextualize, what does this actually mean for me in this company? So having practitioners do the work and then write their own case studies and then present them, that was incredibly powerful. And at the same time, that was great for their personal development, but also we're evangelizing all of these disciplines and educating a megacorp at the same time. And we ended up, I think, one session, one program, there was like in excess of 1,000 non-designers over the course of, I think, about 6 months. The team took them through just to understand a little bit more about what design thinking is. But then embellished that with case studies and real world examples that they could actually relate to, which was incredibly important.
It's fascinating to hear, and there are so many things that are resonating with my own career, but also those that I've heard from other guests as well. But then there is also like the whole purpose of this podcast, they're also highlighting the differences, and I think that's fascinating. Side note, I love the acronym T. And what instantly sprang to mind was, if you're talking about sustainability, then it would be green tea, obviously. So like there's many ways you can go with that. But the idea of getting into an organization and figuring out a framework with a small f on how to really communicate the value of design and help them understand it, not just communicate it, but help them understand it so that they become allies. Effectively, they understand the value and therefore buy into it, and therefore support you and support the departments and support the work that's being done. You mentioned a number of sort of really good mentor figures, managers and leaders that you had throughout that. But I'm really interested to know, without, if you don't want to go into the specifics, but when you reached a point where with HSBC where you thought, okay, this is not the right place, I think it would be really useful for those listening and watching. What would you say are if they're in a place that they're not sure they should be in, they're not sure is right, and what are the kind of signals that you think they should look out for or listen out for in order to make that decision of, I probably shouldn't hang around here much longer?
Right. I'm going to try to answer that, but I'm going to start with a caveat. We find, and I say we, I mean everyone now, we find ourselves in a situation where jobs are scarce, right? Design is, it's evolving, it's changing, and it's hard times. So I think the first thing everyone needs to understand is, you look at your own personal situation. If you have bills to pay and all the rest of it, that comes with that, then that's got to be your priority. But then sidebar to that, if you are in a situation where, like you've said, yeah, this isn't for me, regardless of, the hierarchy, so your own maturity level as a designer. So let's start with, as was the phrase UXlings, right, or younglings, etc. Whether you've got a grad from a nice design school or not, so you're a junior designer. You have to be in a situation where there is mentorship, there is guidance, and there is a space for you to create provocation. Because if you don't feel comfortable to ask questions, that's bullshit. You're not going to learn anything. If you are already constrained in a box and somebody just says, okay, there's a design system, you've got Figma or whatever it is, and I need you to do X, Y, and Z, but you don't feel that you can actually challenge, you don't feel that you can actually explore ideas as a junior designer, you don't have the mentorship, you don't have the colleagues around you, yeah, that's not the best place to start. Okay, so what do you do in that situation? Go back to your own personal network, first and foremost, see what's happening in other places. Go to whatever online channel you like and school yourself up. Find a mentor as best as you can. I mean, I'm still talking to folks, not just from Shell, but also from when I was contracting at different places. We've kept in touch, and they've recommended me to whomever it happens to be as well. And I think it's gone down now. It's 8 people who I will spend time for and mentor because I just think it's the right thing to do. So be accountable for your own destiny. Take control. Don't wallow in anxiety. And anxiety in this context is driven by ambiguity. If there's too much ambiguity for you, that is going to create anxiety. And if you are experiencing that and you're a junior designer, reach out to your network, learn more from whatever source that you can, create more. One of the things that I always encourage folks to do is go to a coffee shop, go to a bar, go to wherever it happens to be, go sit in a park, watch people, understand what humans are doing, understand what humans are not doing, and how humans are interacting. Because how you interact in a bar in London, even you can segment London. A West London bar is going to be quite different to a South London bar, right? So go and explore, see what those differences are, and try and get under the hood of why is that so? And just that teaches you about context. So if you're a mid-level person, so you've done all that stuff, you're got a few contracts under your belt already. Maybe you're on your second or third company that you're working with, and you're left to your own devices. Still go for mentorship. Still go and increase your learning, but be even more focused on what your delivery is, because then you're into the cadence of what now, thankfully, is evolving design ops, right? So from an operational perspective, is your ecosystem communicating to you what their need is? How do you facilitate that need? Not just for the company, but also for the team that you belong to. If they're using Agile, nobody does, but if they are, right, it's either Agile, or Fragile, right? And maybe some Waterfall mixed into that. Is anyone doing retrospectives? Do you again have an opportunity to voice your ideas? Can you play? Can you experiment? And that will be a yes and a no. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if you're in an organization where, nope, you're here to do this is on the backlog, these are the sprint stories, off you pop, and I don't want to hear from you until it's done, Yeah, that's not good either. You'll have to go through those, and you will go through those. Yeah, because that is accumulating scar tissue. And the accumulation of scar tissue is actually more important than delivering awesome design work. Because if you haven't gone through that pain, you're missing out. You won't, when you elevate to being a senior designer, you won't have that scar tissue. You won't have that history. You won't have the answers, most of, not all, of how to manage certain situations. How do you deal with a bullshit stakeholder, whether it's client side or agencies, it doesn't matter.
And I think there's a couple of things in there that I would love to kind of dig down onto. The first that you mentioned that really resonated was the observation of people. As someone who trained as an actor and worked in theatre before coming into design, that whole purpose of sitting there and observing other people, observing how people interact with each other, what they do, how do they, what happens when they bump into a door that's a pull and they push it, how do they order a coffee? Like just the little things that you wouldn't think would tell you anything, tell you a whole world of interaction.
And don't be afraid to verbalize your observations. One thing that I regurgitate a lot, there was a fantastic guy, I was doing some work in Germany, Stuttgart, and he phoned me, right? He was at a train station at the platform, and the guy called me. What's up? And he's, you fucking little shit. Okay, what have I done now? He goes, I'm at station, I'm stood outside this thing, and it's bugging me. I said, what's bugging you? What have I done? There's these two buttons next to the door. One's for emergency and one's for open. That's fucking stupid. Why did anyone do that? And he goes, but if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even be thinking about this. Okay, I'll take that. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was all tongue-in-cheek, but he was a little bit aggranoid as well. But, what do you do? But that was, clearly, once upon a time, me making the observation. I'm telling a story. I'm like, okay, this is my observation. Is this weird? Is it just me? Am I the only crazy one here, or am I just being thick, or what? Tell me. Never, ever, ever be afraid to ask. Ever.
I think from those questions that come out of the observation help you to understand the observation to whatever degree you're going to understand it. There are some that you will fully understand. There are some that you won't understand, and there's some that'll be in the middle ground. But all of that observation helps you tell a better story, because storytelling is about detail. In order to elicit a great emotional response, you have to have the detail in there. I walked down the street and it was raining, and I could feel the water coming through my clothes. I was cold and damp, right, shivering to the bone. Way more emotive, and you're instantly in the picture, the second one, than the first one. And it's all about the detail. And so I think how you learn to add that detail is by observing what happens in life and seeing, so that guy went to pull the push door and it kind of jiggered a little bit in his hand, and then he figured it out, and then there was a little bit of a blush in his cheeks, and he worked it out, and he walked through, and he looked a bit sort of shifty, but then he was relieved because no one saw. Then that's the whole story, and that becomes relatable. And I think no matter what creative discipline you're working in, from product design to UX to animation to branding, those details of the storytelling points are so, so important. Hi. If what we're talking about in this episode is resonating with you, the challenges faced are the ones that are in front of you right now, the path they've taken is your dream career path, whatever it may be, stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can work directly with me to level up your leadership skills. Get 30 years worth of experience downloaded into your skill set in just 4 weeks. At the same time, meet amazing other design leaders as part of your cohort. Thanks for listening. I'll see you at the end. When you think about, all of those places that you've worked, the contracts as well as the full time and the short ones as well as the long ones, is there a point in time that you would go back to you knowing, at the age that you were then, but knowing what you know now? And if there is, what would you say to yourself?
Leave. Because again, yeah, everything is a relationship. Everything, right? I could be drinking whatever this is. I've got a relationship with that cup. I have to treat that cup in a certain way because I have learned to understand its behaviors. And I think that's one of the biggest skills anyone, not just designers, just probably more helpful if you become cognizant that everything is a relationship. Yeah, because you have to, it's always an opportunity to learn something. And to go back to your question, where I had to, get scar tissue, I probably spent a few times in a few different agencies. One comes to mind in Tokyo, which was literally a startup, and you're just doing what you need to do, all hours and everything else. I spent way too much time there. And yes, I learned a lot, doing stuff with Docomo and some other stuff, and learning this brilliant things around blue dye technology at the time. And fine, but then I should have just cut it. Like learning and appreciating, okay, so I'm here for a reason, that's fine. But then how effective am I, and how efficient can my contribution and participation in something be? And I spent way too long, and it just wasn't pretty. I think understanding what your role is, what that success criteria is, so purpose and success criteria, as soon as you possibly can. And then when you are reaching those limits of what those definitions are, learning how to challenge, learning how to say, well, okay, well, that's done. Kind of. Is it? Are you happy with that? Yes, no, maybe. What's next? And if nobody can answer the what's next, and provided your economic situation and everything else is reasonable, you got to bounce.
Mhm.
Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're even in a startup or some mid-size or some megacorp. I think I demonstrated that with HSBC, right? Huge, massive place. Definitely wasn't moving any needle at all after 18 months.
Mhm. Listening to your story, it makes perfect sense. There is this drive for experimentation and to discover the new and to move forward, a constant drive to move forward, not in a bad way at all, in a very positive, a very healthy way. So that makes perfect sense. I would love to know, therefore, what your thoughts are on revisiting a place that you have already moved on from.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened. And whenever you get a gig, right, one of the first things you have to consider when that offer comes in is what is your exit strategy? Yeah. So in and amongst, okay, I've got to speak with all these stakeholders. I've got to familiarize myself with their operating model. I've got to understand what the culture is here, yada, 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 yada. You have to get your head around, okay, purpose, success criteria. What's my exit strategy? Because leaving a place elegantly, as opposed to not, is incredibly important. It's just as important as landing the role in the first place. In certain places, I've been welcomed back with, open arms. Yay! Other places, just like, hell no. We don't have an him. Bloody troublemaker. Oh, no, 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 no. But then you need to balance that with your own personal currency. So I've been told quite recently by someone incredibly influential, I won't mention who she is, that, yeah, well, what did she say? Hey, Joel, you're the dark horse of design and technology leadership. Okay. Just let that there. Just left it there. That's fine. And she's right. She's absolutely 100% right. Because I have my own success criteria, and I call them my 3 E's: experience, expertise, allegedly, and enthusiasm. Right? And it's like, imagine a kid at the fun fair with 3 helium balloons. We've all been there, hopefully. Yeah. And what happens when the helium starts to dissipate? He's not happy. Kid's not happy. A balloon. So you have to keep topping up these 3 balloons. I have to keep topping up those 3 balloons. I need to keep increasing my experience. I have to keep increasing my expertise. And if I don't feel enthusiasm for something, what am I doing? What am I doing? You know, and that isn't something that I read somewhere or whatever. It's a convergence of everything that I have done, and everything positive and negative and mediocre and whatever in between. And I think being a single dad, you know, obviously help from my mum. Didn't do it all on my own. I was lucky in that regard. Miss you, Mum.
I'm with you.
It's learning about yourself. Yeah, that's sounds superficial. Sounds way too left of center. But as a human, and then a productive human, so somebody who hopefully is contributing to the world around them, you have to be able to identify certain traits, certain characteristics that make you you. And you can either choose to embrace that, or you can choose to bin it. It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter. What matters is the outcomes that will manifest. And then hopefully, again, going back to those 3 E's, yeah, you're just constantly learning. And being a single dad, wow, that's an accelerator. Yeah, if anyone, it's different for everybody. The context is different for everyone. I mean, we've all encountered folks with massive egos, right? Particularly in the music world, the creative arts, etc., but also uber technical people. It doesn't matter what the space is. Huge egos, temperance, humility, understanding that you might think you're something special. You're not. You're not. You're part of something that is so much bigger. And if you're not adding value to that so much bigger, there's space for you to add value. There's always going to be space for you to add value. Find it. Because then you can embrace that space, and that space will embrace you.
Yeah, I love that. I've got a lot of stuff going on in my personal life around presence and practicing to be far more present, because I see that as the bedrock of finding who you are, of understanding you, of hearing your inner child, of hearing everything that's going on in your head, and understanding what that means and what you need to give yourself so that you become more balanced, you become more whole. You can then put out into the universe what you are meant to put into the universe. And as a result, not as a reason, but as a result, you will get back from the universe what you deserve. So there is this bedrock of understanding yourself, which you're talking about knowing yourself, and it just makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
One thing, I know we're going probably way over time. Apologies, but I came back from a trip, and my younger one then, He was upstairs in my bedroom because when I was traveling about for work, the boys just wanted to stay in Daddy's room. Right. And I'd got given a beautiful cross lapis lazuli gold fountain pen, which is obviously in a box, and some Mont Blanc thing, whatever, that was in a box. So I get back in my room, Josh is there and he's colouring in. And in one hand, he's got this lapis lazuli gold, and another one, he's like two of the most expensive, like, he's got all of his colours and everything, but he's got, like, Bubba, what? This is lovely. Show me what you do. Why are you using? And he'd climbed up somewhere to get hold of these things. And he just looked around and goes, but you don't use them, Daddy. And it just smacked me around the chops. Because what was I doing? Getting in a cab, going to an airport, whatever. From the airport, go to the hotel, whatever. Go to the office, hotel, cab, back, boom. That was it. I was traveling to some incredible places on the planet. But if somebody said to me, oh, what do you think of Chicago? Osaka. Yeah. Dunno. I was working. What a dick. What an absolute dick. Everything's an opportunity. Everything. And if you've got the absolute privilege of exploring our beautiful planet, take some time. Yeah? And if you've got some absolute tool who says, nah, can't do that, then it goes back to that, okay, why am I here? Because people need to be people. People need space to be people. And that's incredibly important. And if you are this quote-unquote leader, whatever that is, you have to create those spaces for your people. I hope you've realized I've never even once used the word management. I can't stand the word management. I prefer to say I look after people. Because if you're not looking after people, what's the point?
When you look back at all the teams that you've worked with and that have looked to you for leadership, is there a common thread to what drives you to be that supportive figurehead, let's say, mentor?
There's two things. One's a framework. Visibility is accountability. And the other one is smiling is the only currency worth anything. So I'll use the big mega energy company as an example, as a positive example. Lots of tiers, everything from grad to whatever, and then distinguished designers, right? I'd speak with all of them. I'd sit down. I remember the first time when I went to Bangalore and there was only like 3 folks there. He says, right, we're going out. Where are we going? It's like, midday, whatever. Okay, let's just go for coffee. No pressure, blah, 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 blah. Literally, we got up, went out. I could feel eyes on me because it was an open floor plate. Did that for the week or so I was there. Got back to London and load of complaints. My level and above. Yeah, who is this new guy? He's too disruptive. His people just like, yeah, they go to coffee together. Lunch together. Make too much noise. Yeah. Our teams are now saying, well, why can't we do that? No. Stop that. Well, yeah, okay, you guys do what you want with your folks. I'm going to do what I want with mine. Productivity through the roof. People happy. If anyone's ever gone to Bangalore, yeah, no one's going to turn up. It's not a 9 to 5 gig, right? Those wonderful people will get up at 5, if not earlier, and they live in the city. In order to get to the office, they try for 9. They'll turn up maybe 11 because of the sheer volume of traffic. There's literally one road in and out of that place. Wherever you're going, there's one road in and out. And it is horrific. So then what do? You tell folks, okay, work from home. Or you tell them, okay, we'll flex your hours. Oh, but my stakeholder says they need me. Do it from home. This is before remote working. Just before COVID. Why? What are they going to do? Why you want someone to bust their ass in the middle of traffic? Not productive, not happy, demotivated. They're going to get back, and the first thing they're going to do is listen to someone whining at them because they're late. Bullshit. So empathizing with that ecosystem, understanding what that ecosystem is all about, how it functions, how it tries to breathe. Because if you don't do that, your people aren't going to breathe. And then make yourself visible operationally. I introduced, this is the thing I've been nurturing for quite some time, whenever we'd have team meetings, right from the outset, what's your score? What do you mean, score? Okay, it's a sus rating, so we're not going 1 to 10 because that's just nuts. Sorry, marketing people. It's 1 to 5, right? Number 1 is shit. It couldn't get worse than this. And 5 is euphoria. It's brilliant. It's amazing. Yeah, but is that work or is that... It's a combination. It's just how you feel. Something's going on at home, your cat's ill, whatever it is, or it's you're having some interesting conversations with your stakeholders. Combine, what is your score today? And you keep doing that. And you keep doing that. And slowly, it resonates. There's a couple of things that are there cognitively that are going to happen. You're shifting your people from thinking, this guy's just crazy, to there is method in his madness. Because he keeps graphs. He's that nuts. He keeps graphs of these things. And he can see there is a trend. And then this is why he intervened. This is why he went to talk to that GM for that department before they could actually say anything. That, for me, is support. Right? In context.
Mm.
When you arrive, I'm using Bangalore again, but it could be anywhere. Yeah, let's change it. Team in Porto, right? Portugal. Just arrived. I took 2 of my OT, and we just went. Because the people there, I'd heard, had felt isolated. They're kind of like a satellite over there. It was nearshoring. Okay, we'll just go and see you. The third-party company there who, they were working through, absolutely freaked out. And politically, okay, it's probably not the best thing to do. Maybe I should have told some people we were coming. But the important thing for me was those folks are important. They haven't said it to me at team meetings or whatever, or to their team leaders. Or maybe they did mention it to their team leaders. But, team leaders didn't tell me. If your people aren't happy, if they're not smiling, don't be smiling all the time. Everyone gets busy, everyone has down day, whatever. But if they don't see that you care, if you're not visible, how are you accountable?
Mm.
How does that work? And I was lucky that I had the budget to actually do that. So I'm speaking from a position of abundance. But what's more important? What is more important? If you are looking after people and you find out that no, don't like this. Why can't you try and be visible? Why can't you try and help that situation? Because just in the same way that when I take on a gig, okay, what's my purpose, success criteria? What's my exit strategy? It works for them also. It works for your people also. If they hear, okay, Joel started off somewhere else, would you rather them saying, oh, fuck, thank God he's not here. Jesus, man. No, what a bloody weirdo. Or would you rather, man, it was so cool. It was so cool. He actually looked out for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a relationship. And it doesn't matter whether it's a junior person, it's a senior person, whatever. Yeah, and if people don't like me being this way, don't hire me. Don't hire me. Because I will over-deliver. The people who are with me will be over-delivering, and they will be happy doing it. I've proven that. Not everybody. There are some folks, my last LT, for example, it's not going to work for everyone. Right? One of the, I wouldn't say more challenging things, but definitely a challenge of when you're looking after teams who are looking after teams who are looking after teams, right? And you have that hierarchy. Yeah, folks have got their own agendas sometimes. You know, they're ambitious. They want to get on. It's normal. It's normal. But there's a way to do that. And sometimes, yeah, their way isn't yours. But it's just experience. That's one of my helium balloons being filled.
Right. I love this. I mean, in the courses and the coaching that I teach, the courses I teach and the coaching I undertake, for me, everything is about a human to human framework. It doesn't matter whether you're talking to someone that reports to you, or whether you're talking to your leadership, or whether you're talking to your client or your client's leadership. Everyone is a human. They have good and bad days.
Yep.
So, the reason why they may, and this is an outdated reference, but the reason why they may put the phone down harder and faster than they do on most days is probably because they pranged the car on the way to the train station. They had an argument with their partner before they left. They forgot to have breakfast. It was raining and they got wet.
You don't
Any
know.
number, you don't know. And if you don't, in a way that is relevant with the relationship you have with that person, ask, then there's nothing you can do to help them and you in that situation and make the situation better. So everything you're saying makes absolute perfect sense. I would love to know, when you think of everything you've produced, all the projects you've worked on, all the people you've worked with, was there a time where you made a decision, or you made a route forward, and it didn't quite go according to plan? And if there was, what did you learn from that?
Wow, so many. Crikey. So let's be clear. Something that I was accountable for, something that I had planned for, and it hadn't executed as well as I had hoped for. And then what did I do about it? Have I framed that properly?
Yeah, like, what did you learn from that? Is there a time where something didn't go according to plan and it taught you a lesson that has stuck with you?
Okay, as somebody who really, really loves delivering and loves looking after people, right? You can't keep everyone happy all of the time. And it's a question that a lot of the people who I mentor, they will ask me as well. Okay, so it's WYSIWYG. What you get with Joel, what you see is what you get. Yeah. Obviously I vary, and there's a divergence with who I'm speaking with, depending upon the hierarchy and the context and all the rest of it. But broadly speaking, this is me. what happens where it doesn't pan out the way that you thought it might? You have to deal with that. You have to have enough personal integrity to understand that you're not infallible, number one. You don't know everything, number two. And number three, is it worth salvaging? Right? So like I said before, everything is a relationship. And you can be in a great relationship, but then something might happen or a series of events might happen. You have a choice. Do I stay in that relationship or do I move on? And the other person or parties will have exactly the same choice to make. So last big gig I had crikey at one point 11 directs because the team just grew and I hadn't introduced design ops then. But then I knew this is just not sustainable. I have to introduce design ops. And I did. But there were a couple of people who were very, very, very resistant to it, hugely resistant to it, because their success criteria was, look at all of these people who I'm accountable for. And if this design ops thing gets introduced, then I'm going to lose that power. You didn't really have any power in the first place because you just don't. But they had built up that visage. And that delayed design ops by and the introduction and the maturation of it for 9 months. And it made it incredibly difficult, not just for the design community, Experience Design, but also for our stakeholders, because you're moving from a very, very rigid, siloed, mechanical, formulaic set of processes, not just the joy that design ops brings. And if you do it appropriately, it just makes everything so much easier, not just for your teams, not just for your practitioners, but also for your stakeholders and the broader organization, because they've all lived a world of DevOps and DevSecOps, and here's this weird bunch of people and they're doing design ops. What's that all about? Yeah. So does that have I started to explore that for you sufficiently, or do you want me to do any more or not?
No, that's fantastic. I'm just going to pause slightly because this one jumped up for his 15 seconds of fame. No, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And I appreciate the candid response in that. I would love to sort of come out of work mode and ask you, what are you most proud of outside of work?
Oh, that's hard. Wow. My Bubba's, hands down, right? My fiance now, crikey, home, the fact that aside of that personal circle, and I on my show Dubba, there's one person in particular who did an episode with, hadn't spoken to them for crikey 20 years, and they are insanely brilliant at what they do. Yeah, they work for the royal family, etc., right? Connected up the wazoo. And in minutes of me sending out a speculative message, email, whatever, called me back, and it was like I was back in the room with them. Nothing had changed. And other folks, again, with just the venture that I'm exploring different things, and people will just say, I'm doing it. Okay. Right. Okay. I wasn't expecting. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy. I'm grateful. But yeah, just people being great,
Mm.
being accommodating, being amazing.
I love that. That's an answer full of love. It really is. We're coming up on time.
Yes.
So time
Sorry.
for the final question. No, it's just been an amazing episode, and there's no time limit on these either. So we're coming up on the final question, which is the same. Hang on. Can you hear that?
I can hear that. He's looking for a bone.
Good boy. We're coming up on time on the show, so it's time for the final question. It's the same final question that every guest gets asked. Are you, Joel, awaiting approval?
No. Not at all.
Fantastic. This is your opportunity. How do people get in touch with you? Is there anything you'd like to promote? Anything where that people can find you online? Now's the time to let people know.
Okay, so LinkedIn, obviously. That's, I guess, the most professional way. I've got my own website now, joelgill.com. You can have a look. Try to keep that up to date as much as I can. Experience Artisan is my rebooted consultancy. But yeah, contact-wise, probably LinkedIn is the best one. Started this podcast as well called Dubba. Season 2 is being recorded now. And that is all about stories that matter. It's not focusing exclusively on design. I've got some wannabe F1 drivers, which is insane and brilliant. Michelin chefs. I've done one episode already. I've got, you never knew there were so many of them around. Everyone wants to, when can I do one? That's happening, which is a joy to do. Editing is, I wish I could hire someone to edit it, but no. It's painful, but it's also a joy. I'm about to do something else, which I can't really talk about as well, but that is going to focus on the evolution of design in India, which is something which is very, very close to my heart, because India is just non-stop exploding, which is brilliant. And if I can ask, I'm writing a lot more Medium articles, LinkedIn articles, and all that kind of jazz. If anyone's bored enough to look at them and read them and all the rest of it, if you think they're good, if you think they're crap, just let me know, because that's super, super important.
Fantastic. Joel, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an episode full of heart and love. I really appreciate how candid you've been with your answers. And I think there's a huge amount here for people listening and watching. So thank you.
Sorry for lumbering you with so much editing to be done. But look, thank you for the opportunity. Genuinely surprised and humbled at the same time. I don't get asked to do these things a lot. But I hope it adds value to you and the folks who are going to be listening to it.
I'm positive that it will. Absolutely positive.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
If today's conversation got you thinking about your own growth as a creative leader, then my program, Supercharge Creative Leaders, might well be the next step for you. It's a 4-week cohort designed to help those in leadership positions and those aspiring to be in leadership positions to lead at a world-class level. You'll learn how to communicate with impact, grow your confidence, and lead teams that thrive, all without losing your creativity. It's a mix of pre-recorded video sessions, live Q&As with me and the rest of your cohort, and an incredible community of peers who will support you along the way. People who've already been through the course have gone on to win new roles, land promotions, get huge multi-million-dollar pitches, and they all put it down to the course and the confidence it gave them. So if you're ready to get noticed, get promoted, or finally step into that dream role, join the next cohort. Head to growwithadamjennings.com and sign up to Supercharged Creative Leaders. I can't wait to start working with you.
Awaiting Approval is a Cordial Fox production, hosted by Adam Jennings, produced by Adam Jennings and Jasmine Egner.